Hello. I know it's been a while, but I'm going to touch on this, which I'm probably going to make a video on my actual YouTube um, going forward. And it's uh, it's kind of I guess it's kind of touchy, but I don't care. Um, so, first class citizens. So, I've been reading a lot of history and especially about America and just in general. And I want to say, like, there are some first class citizens' rights. And if you don't have these rights, you are not a first class citizen, right? So if you live in Illinois or, anywhere else where your first class citizen rights are limited. So, one, which everyone has, is to vote. So if you can vote, you're a first class citizen, right? To be on juries, pretty, and to run for office. And then one of the major ones is Second Amendment. Second Amendment is a first class citizen right to to bear arms, right? So if you are able to exercise your Second Amendment rights, and it says that Congress shall make no law. So federal gun laws are actually unconstitutional, every last one of them. Now, when it comes to the states, that's a different argument because then you have to look at each individual state constitution. Well, and then even that, like there's more arguments that we could actually make. So that's for another time. But so just for basic Second Amendment rights, right? That's a first class citizen right. So if you are unable or they are limited, that makes you thus is making you a second class citizen, right? Um, and there are people who are second class. Like if you're a violent felon and you can't vote or own a gun, you earn that right to be a second class citizen, right? Because if you went out and murdered someone, there's no way that you should be walking around with a gun. Uh, Now, other felonies, like nonviolent felonies, that has to be done case by case, and you have to look at the offense, right? Um, but and I guess even some violent felonies you should look at case by case to see. Um, but if you are for gun restrictions, right? Then you are essentially arguing for second class citizenship. And then, like blacks, because if you notice that it's majority black areas like Chicago and stuff like that, where gun laws are often stricter and where Democrats rule. The people who claim to be fighting for your rights, but their rights, the rights that they are fighting for you, are foreign. And actually, I would say they're not even really fighting for your rights. They're fighting to restrict your rights, right? So they might fight that a right to housing, right? But then that housing that you get is going to be filthy and be falling apart. Even if they give you new stuff, eventually it's going to start falling apart. And if you live in public housing now, then a lot of you probably already know what the management of that property is like, and what the living conditions and how safe it is. Um, yeah, it's but so um, continuing from there. So like you have to be able to bear arms and be well armed. It's not just so like if you have a pistol that only has one shot, you can't compete with anybody because the right to bear arms is not the number one function is not to protect yourself, and it's not hunting, right? It's not to protect yourself on a civilian level or an individual level or like your house or something. Like those fall into it. Like owning a gun helps you protect your house and all that stuff, and you have a right to protect yourself. But the Second Amendment is the right to protect yourself from the government, which is why probably most black places are disarmed. And if you think about it, it's really the Democrats who are the first people to disarm you. And then, of course, you have like criminals and stuff, and then often you fall prey to the criminals and stuff like that as well. But then, I mean, that's one of the reasons why like black communities has developed a hood culture where they idolize the thug, because really in black culture the thug, because he doesn't really follow the law, like he has guns, he sells drugs, sleeps with a bunch of women, yada yada yada, but he exercises a lot of rights that a lot of blacks feel they don't have, right? But often you don't have those rights because you're told you don't have those rights by the people who wish you not to have those rights. Because most Republicans and I mean a lot of other people don't care if you own guns, right? If you're a law-abiding citizen and you're not going around shooting up places or robbing people, like you should be able to own a gun, and you should be able to own a 30-round magazine, like flamethrower. Like I would even argue a shoulder-fired rocket. Like all of those things, as a citizen, you can own. Which there's certain you know, some of them have some hurdles, some of them don't. Like, but you should be able to own those things because the whole. Remember how Joe Biden says that it doesn't matter if you have like 30-round clips or what rifles or whatever. Like you can't compete with jets and tanks and yada yada yada. Like he's partially right. I mean, because there are people who own tanks and jets, but not. It wouldn't be on the same level as trying to fight. If you had to fight our government, right? Our government is actually pretty advanced, but as first class citizens, like it is important that you are able to be armed, and you are armed, and you teach your kids gun safety. And that if you don't want to have a weapon, that's fine. Like that's your decision, but you shouldn't be pushing to disarm other people, especially when criminals are the ones who cause most of the harm, and they normally choose places where nobody else has guns. So by pushing to have guns taken away, period, you're actually pushing to give the criminal more power. Which I know you guys have heard this argument over and over again, but what I'm saying is that in the black communities, most of you, where gun laws are strict and that it makes it hard for the average person to own and carry a gun, you are in effect a second class citizen, and or I mean, well, yeah, because there's two people that can't practice first class citizen rights, right? That's second class citizens and slaves, right? So if you're a slave, then um, I mean, yeah, you can't really own anything. You don't have any right to anything. And I could tell you that the person that advocates for your Second Amendment right to go, like your First Amendment right will go, and then voting will become irrelevant, right? And so essentially, they'll make everyone second class citizens, but then it'll probably go to the latter where everyone is slaves, because when you cannot resist the government and they can do whatever they want, they will do whatever they want, and they are not good people. Like there's good people that work in government, but the machine of government is not good, right? And large portions of the Democratic Party are not good, and there are large portions of the Republican Party that aren't good, and because they're politics, and most of them are narcissists, and they only are doing what's going to benefit them, right? And then there are other people who have a different ideology, right? And their ideology is to disarm people and is to put the centralized power in the government so that the government can then choose everything for you. And I don't know. I don't really want the government to choose everything for me because they're not very good at choosing the limited power that they do have. Well, actually, there's not. They actually have quite unlimited power right at the moment. Um, they don't use it very well. So I Yeah. So become first class citizens. Go buy a gun, get your gun permit, which you shouldn't really even really need, um, because if you're not allowed to own a gun, like you, it's the same. Because permits don't actually stop people from uh, owning the guns. Like if you didn't have gun permits, like felons and people who aren't supposed to own guns still couldn't own guns. So just saying, because I mean, yeah, background checks are done on permits, right? But only law most of the time. Only law-abiding citizens apply to carry or for gun permits. Criminals just carry it anyways. It doesn't matter. So, um, I'm sure there have been criminals who have applied for a gun permit and then didn't get it, but still carry their gun. So you're not stopping anything with a permit. So constitutional carry is what you should want, especially if you're a black person, because then like it's that easy. And I mean, for everyone, everyone's a first class citizen then. Um, and limited. I mean, gun control because well, you didn't even really need gun control because the fact is if someone until someone does something wrong with that handgun, or unless they are a felon or something, like they can own that thing. There's nothing wrong with them owning it. So they literally have to break a law, and you could say, well, the gun laws stop people from getting guns into their hands. Like no, it doesn't. It doesn't. It just doesn't. Especially not in this tech in our age where you can just print guns and stuff like that. Like it's not a factor anymore. And I'm on my friend. One of my friends would probably argue that like niggas don't think like that, and that they're. But I mean, it really doesn't matter if they think like that or not. They're still killing each other in record numbers, even in places where they have the strictest gun laws. So, I mean, yeah. But the second part, I keep hearing like because Joe Biden's elected, and now there's this whole like tension, because Joe Biden's the things that Joe Biden's pushing to do, and I mean one of them is heavily some heavy gun control and actually unconstitutional stuff, and immigration policy like is crazy. His immigration policy is crazy, and if you're black, you should be against it because it actually that's another video, but you're actually committing both political suicide and economic suicide. But that's a whole nother story. Um, but is this the black person's fight? Like, yeah. Are you a black American citizen? Yes. If not, like, then what? Why? What's the whole point of BLM and all that stuff? And what's all this talk of equal rights and how you need to advance? Like, even though you already have equal rights, it's just that people keep again. It's brainwashing. They keep telling you and telling you that you don't have it, so then you never exercise it. Therefore, you don't have it. You willingly are slaves. You willingly are second class citizens because you don't exercise your rights. Like, as a free man, you don't ask to exercise your rights. You just have them. But this requires self governance and this requires self responsibility, which a large portion of the black community does not want. They want other people to pay for them. They don't want to take. They don't want to take responsibility for their own education because really, when it comes down to it, government education is. I mean, it's dumb because the government indoctrinates your kids, and the fact that like blacks aren't even meeting the standards in education now, that so much so that they're actually lowering the bar. But this comes from part of that factor that's hurting that is that you don't have families that stay together. Like you don't have enough husbands and wives and complete families, because complete families, you can pass on your values, you can teach your kids, because you have that other person that's there with the kids when you're at work. You're not struggling so hard by yourself, right? And this affects the family. And then I've seen a lot of just, I know like everyone talks about the single moms, but there's a lot of single moms that just let their kids do whatever. And then like a lot of them are these kids running in the streets and stuff like that. Or their dads are trash, and sometimes it's their dads that cause them to grow up to be trash, and in the ideas that they put in their head. But this is your fight. Like unless you are, um, I mean, if you don't consider yourself a black American, or I mean just an American in general, like, and you feel like you're a foreigner, because I mean, a lot of you, the thinking that's in your head is foreign. You've been indoctrinated by the Muslims. You've been indoctrinated by the white liberals, the white liberal Marxists. You've been indoctrinated by all these foreign ideas, and all they do is cause you to hate the freedom, like that your ancestors, that many blacks died to give you equal freedoms, and you have it. Like no matter what anyone says, you have it. Some companies might give you a raw deal here and there, but for the most part, I mean, especially now, you see all these companies with the Black Lives Matter thing and all that. Like, what? Who's? Yeah, like it's ridiculous now. There's nothing in your way except for yourself. And if you're, again, if you don't feel like you're an American citizen, then this is not your fight, and stay out of it. Like you shouldn't stay. Like I don't even know why you're here in the first place. You should be looking at every possible way you could get out of America and live somewhere that has your values. But you don't want to go anywhere else because America is too cozy. Like even our poor are way better off than the poor in I mean, I would say 100% of the African countries and most other countries as well. But like, how many of you are first class citizens? You don't consider yourself first class citizens, so you'll never be first class citizens, and you don't get the ideas of freedom because they're not taught among your people. And now I'm going to start talking to you, and this is specifically to those who feel like this isn't their fight. They're not taught among your people, and you guys are foreigners, because like freedom is something, political freedom is something that you have to, like, that is fought for, and it's something that you yourself embrace and live out. But that'll never be taught in a democratic school, or or I should say in democratic schooling, that goes along with the liberal thought. So shalom, and it's your fight. Either, I mean, and I wouldn't choose Joe Biden's side. You had a president, like, it's funny, is that the Democrats got you to demonize and hate a person that actually that was willing to listen to you, and because he gave more than, out of all the presidents, he gave more than Obama did to the Black College Fund. He was willing to work with Ice Cube and get Trump to invest in $500 billion into the black community. That's the deal that would, if Trump would have been reelected, that's the deal that would have happened. Like, y'all are dumb. Like $500 billion, that's reparations right there. It wasn't called reparations, but that's reparations. Like, you had it and you lost it. So, and now you're gonna get some kind of some dumb Like it's going to be some hokey reparations that isn't going to advance you at all. You might get some money and all that stuff, but eventually that'll be gone, and then you'll be left with the same slavehood that you've been given now. In the places where the Democrats have ruled, and it's predominantly black, you're still black and hungry, right? Still poor, still living in horrible conditions, especially if it's publicly owned, and yet y'all still voting the same. It don't make no sense. So like the state of a lot of these communities, especially if you vote Democrat, is your own fault. It's no longer white people's fault or anything. Right now, you're making a conscious decision to stay the same. If you want the black community to thrive in America and you want it to be black Americans, free black Americans, you have to start acting like free black Americans, which is a revamp. You got to throw away the education that the white liberals have given you, right? And you need to start reading learn about the Constitution, learn about the ideas, why the founders made this clause and that clause. And you could say, well, there's slavery clauses, but not anymore. You're free now, and you have every access to every one of those rights on there. So by not taking advantage of them, you're a willing slave and you're an idiot. But I digress. Y'all have a good night. Shalom.